I figured it might have been, but 220.
But it's a lot of them.
That's
it's a lot of them.
Oh yeah, like
and I mean that's what is really powerful about this movie is that like this is a crazy scenario to be in. These people are absolutely psychotic to have created the conditions for this to have ever happened.
Yes.
The fact that many of this stuff was actually caught on camera by a Dutch cinematographer, Jan de Bont, which many people will be familiar with, fucking shot Die Hard, shot Basic Instinct, directed Speed with Keanu Reeves. Like, that's why this film is memorable, because he was the guy tasked with setting up anywhere from 5 to 8 cameras in various positions to catch glimpses of the animals doing these amazing things that we're going to talk about them doing. And frequently following all the maulings and assaults we see in close proximity handheld that feels like the camera could be in danger. So much so that, as Jamie mentioned, he was fucking he got scalped because he put a he dug a hole so that he could get a low angle shots of like lions like sprinting over the camera, and they actually pawed their way into the hole that he was in, which is how he ended up getting scalped. And he came back and continued working after that and basically said that, I mean, it was kind of like just an unbelievable experience that, you know, cats would never do the same thing twice. And you kind of had to hide the cameras, which was like a technical nightmare in the footage. And he was like, it was just such a challenge. Yeah. And the dude's a legend to get scalped and come back and shoot this. And it's inarguably astonishing footage, no matter what you think of the production history itself.
Yeah. And like the thing is too, what I found interesting is that he's like, for hours, to be honest, they would do nothing. Like he just have hours and hours of unusable footage of cats basically just lying about and doing absolutely nothing. And then what I'm just thinking is when they're doing scenes with dialogue, oftentimes in this movie, when they're just doing, you know, simple back and forth dialogue to progress the plot and progress the characters, they have in the background all these lions, and they'll be fucking just starting to fight each other like crazy. So much so, and so ferociously so, that actors will actually get up mid dialogue and like look at the lions, clearly terrified out of their minds, and you almost seem like they're about to look over to the camera or the director and be like, do we continue doing this? And it's really just because they would have, you know, they'd shoot for hours every day, and they'd be lucky if they had like one take that was usable after so much hours of footage, just because everything was so unpredictable. That being said, though, he does get some really incredible footage. Like one specific shot that I love is when he's just following John Marshall on the motorbike next to a giraffe that's running next to him and stuff. So some of that stuff is amazing. And I mean, I'll say this: Noel Marshall is fucking an insane person. But because he's also often the one that is going into the danger and putting himself. He
is in the most scary situations of probably most people. So on some level, you're like, this should never have happened, especially all the harm to the animals. But the fact that the psycho behind it all is throwing himself first in. There's a tiny bit of like, you know, okay, you know.
And there's this hilarious thing about it that it's both. It's not.
He's not like behind the camera endangering just other people, is what we mean.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like admirable. It's just one of those things that I am, you know, there's this stupid caveman respect I have for when this absolute idiot just goes out into the middle of 30 lions and starts screaming at the top of his lungs, thinking that that's going to stop them from fighting each other. It's just absolutely insane. And he's also the one that took, like, if you go through the injury lists on the Wikipedia page, he has an entire paragraph that's dedicated to him because he went through so much crazy shit. And he also is a lot of the time the footage of like him on the same motorcycle I was just talking about, but going through, you know, 50 lions as they're actually trying to tackle him and grab him off the motorcycle. So, you know, there's a lot to be said on almost like a stuntman kind of respect that I have for the man, but he's just a fucking lunatic. And what's funny about the narrative too is his character, because he's the one.
We should tell people what the narrative is if anyone who maybe hasn't seen the film.
Yeah.
because like very, very loosely, this is, Noel Marshall is playing this American naturalist or environmentalist named Hank, who lives on a local nature preserve in Tanzania and studies and takes care of animals and sort of local Tanzanians with his big old 70s beard and motorcycle. Again, the really cool shot of him early on riding it right next to a full sprint giraffe, like he's like a member of the herd or something like that. And he claims that he does this as a character because he needs to be as close to them as possible for his studies. He's kind of invented a character that could functionally be like the dream version of himself. And you can tell tonally right away what he's going for when it opens on like African, like sort of like this like pop country ballad where he's like, whose land is this? This is my land, over like beautiful sunset vistas, I do think it's funny that they do open that with great pride. We display the seal of the American Humane Association. There are some scenes may appear to show animals being injured, but none were actually hurt, which is true on screen. It is completely false about how many died and got injured off screen. Just in the conditions of the actual set. That's how they got around it. They must have. And they were like, we'll give the animals writing and directing credit too, to show how involved and consenting they were as well.
Absolutely. They were having a blast
but shortly after, he rolls up to a pride of real lions just playing and growling, and he tries to interact with them casually, but you can even hear him right away that he's like squeaking in fear. He's like, how are you guys doing today?